Ethan, have you got any advice for your students on their long-term career?
Yes, I have. I have a few architectural technologists who will be graduating soon, and I'm preparing for their careers, and I'm also thinking about their careers. So, uh, last week we discussed about the difference between architects and architectural technologists, and also briefly covered uh, how their career will be. So, I think for young architectural technologists or fresh grads or architectural technologists, they will, I believe, they will get a job and they will start working in an architectural firms or trained by a good architectural technologist. And eventually, after a few years clocking in, getting the experience, and they will get LBP, and probably they have enough times enough, and they still have driven to get a degree to become an architect, and eventually they will register, becomes New Zealand registered architects, which will opens them up for the whole careers. And also so that is my ultimate goals and my vision to the young students. I believe they would, and they are always driven to go to that directions. That's what I'm thinking of, and I sometimes, when I meet the young architects, I'll also talk about uh, some of my experience, some inspirations, some thought about, or some pictures, or designs where what what they can get inspiration on. And most of the time those are the not, instead of being residential, they are more commercials, because these are architecturals done by the architectural firms. And frankly, I'm a little bit biased because I was trained as an architect. But even though that's true, anyway, even though I'm trained as an architect, when I put myself as a tutors, I want my students to be the best, right? If when they do the drawings, I want proper, clean drawings, and give times, or when they do the documentations or writing assignments, I want them to come out the best answer. I try to support. That's, as a tutors, my mind is different. As architects, my mind is different. But I ultimate goals that what I want to see is I want them to be, at one point they become a New Zealand registered architects. It may take a few years, but that should be that. This is the thing, the route they should be aiming for. And yeah, being a star architect will be another level, but at least that what they should do, and what they should prepare for. Like, we prepare for their minds of using different software, and also we need to prepare their mind of becoming a registered architect. That's what I'm thinking. And what about you?
Well, it's interesting that there's the phrase you used. I've just written some notes down. So there's a phrase you used about we should encourage them to choose a good architectural technologist to learn from, but we haven't. But we'd also need to give them some advice on how to do that. So, for example, I've worked with some architects who started life as an architectural technologist. My old friend James, and he was brilliant at planning, really, really good at planning, lovely three-dimensional forms of his buildings. And he was very open with me about how he would do stuff, how he would choose it. I learned so much from him, but I could easily have gone to work for a different architect. Okay, maybe I worked for him. And he wasn't open about the process. He wasn't open about what he wanted. He would always tell me what he didn't want, but I found it very difficult to know what he really wanted. And he wouldn't guide me. And so while he was an architect, and he again started as an architectural technologist and a joiner, um, but I just didn't feel as comfortable working in that environment, because I'd only be told when it was wrong. I'd never be told when I was right, or guided
Mhm,
in the right direction.
mhm,
And when I interviewed Gary, what Gary said is that he never tells his staff they're wrong. but he asks them what other options they looked at and tries to encourage them to think of other options. What could you have done here instead of that, to try and expand their mind? So he is teaching his
Hmm.
next generation by teaching them to think and teaching them to question what other options there were there. And
Yeah.
so, you know, you could get lucky and go work for Gary or James, but you could also get unlucky and work for some of the other architectural technologists that need work, that need workers, but then don't have that skill of design that the other people have got. So have you got any advice for those students on how do you choose the person that you want to go work for?
That could be another problem for small towns, like small place like us. For me being a New Plymouth and you being Hawke's Bay, right? So they don't have much choice anyway. And the industry, since the industry has already know them, there was so a little bit difficult for them, I believe. But my advice is keep curious, keep focused, let yourself driven, and some of the things it's life. I don't learn any. Some of the things I don't learn from school. I had to be keep curious, and I keep to find the way out. I make sure I need to learn by myself. Sometimes I had to be street smart. Sometimes I had to be book smart. So yeah, the driven, the mindset of the curiosity is also important, I believe, because for example, like you're
Absolutely.
teaching what is it, vectors walks, right? So but who teach you? But you're teaching by yourself, right? And you're
Well,
teaching the world, and always keep curious, isn't it?
well, I think keeping curious is one of those things. I worked for a guy. It was actually, he told me this when I was still at high school, and he said
Hmm.
that he loves being. I mean, he's got a great quote that he taught me when I was at high school, and that is that architecture is making places and spaces for people, which I think is a really pithy way of describing it, because places have a special emotional location. Spaces, of course, that's the volume, and so it's a little bit like firmness, commodity, and delight
Hmm.
in that way. But it was his own words, and I've kept that with me for all these years, because to me it was just a great way of describing what's the difference between a building and architecture. You know, a building is
Hmm.
just a volume, but architecture has got
Hmm.
a place. It's got that feeling of place. Um,
Hmm.
but the other thing is to keep curious. So what he
Yeah.
said to me all those years ago was, he's curious. He's curious about everything. If he has to put a toilet in, he wants to know everything about it. If he has to put in a
Hmm.
septic tank, he wants to know how it works. How does this whole thing work? What happens to what happens to the sewage when it goes in? Where does it go? What happens? Oh, it's got worms in it. How do they? What do they do? What happens? Where does the water go? So he's curious about the
Hmm.
entire, even the most mundane thing, he's curious about. And I think I've
Hmm.
kept that curiosity as well. And I think our students need to be encouraged to keep that curiosity. And part of the challenge, of course, is when they start the course, is that they don't want to be curious. They want to be told.
Hmm. Yeah.
And part of our 2 year training is, for want of a better term, getting them to think differently,
Yeah.
to,
Yeah.
to, to be curious, to be to research things, not to trust what everybody says. My colleague Andrews calls it ABC, accept, no, what is it? Assume nothing, believe nobody, check everything.
All right. Cool.
And and it's quite a good way of putting it, because then when a student goes, oh, I thought I could just do this, as I ABC, man, you know,
Hmm.
you've
Hmm.
made an
Hmm.
assumption. What you can't assume, you've got to check. Um,
Yeah.
oh, but Joe told me I could do it because he did it on his drawings. Yeah,
Oh
believe
no.
nobody. Um,
Yeah.
so it's quite good from that point of view. But I think that making your students curious is one of the most important things we can do. It's very
Yeah.
difficult to do. But coming back to that, how do we get them to choose the right person to work for? Well, what if they keep their eyes open? What if they're curious about the buildings that are going up? What if we can get them to look at who's building that? Who designed that building? Is that the sort of
Yeah.
person? Is that the sort of person you want to work for? So if you want to know who to work for, start being curious in your environment. Start seeing who's designing what, um,
Hmm.
and go and see those people. Go and tell them that you're curious about their work. You offer to go in and work on a Friday afternoon for nothing, or do something else. But let those people know that you're curious and that you're interested.
Yeah. When I was young, after I finished my graduations, and at the time the internet started, the email is just infants, but I can send any email anyway. So what did I do was like, I sent an email to Renzo Piano of Italy, and
Why
with
why not
my
start at the top and
portfolio.
work your way down?
And yeah, why not? I want to come and work for you. Yeah, I can do this. And
I
yeah,
didn't
what?
I didn't do that, but when I went to Philadelphia, I phoned up Robert Venturi from
Hmm.
Venturi Roch Scott Brown, because they got in a little office in Philadelphia. I called them up and said, I'm an architect, I'm in town, and I'm just traveling through. Can I come in and can you show me around? And they were so accommodating. They showed me all kinds of stuff. They showed me around. I saw the drawing room. I saw the chairs. The I don't know if you remember, but Venturi did those Chippendale chairs made out of plywood.
Yeah.
They
Hmm.
had some of those. You could actually see them and touch them, and they were really
Hmm.
lovely. And I'd just go somewhere and I'd phone up the local branch of it, Institute of Architects, and say,
Yeah.
does anyone want to talk to me?
Yeah.
I knocked on Frank Gehry's front door. That didn't go well. No one answered.
Yeah. Because that's curiosity. I was young and curious, young, curious, and wild. That's the best I can do. That's taking all the best
Absolutely.
advantages, right? So
Don't take no.
I'm an architect. I'm young architects, and I want to work for you.
Hmm.
Knock the door.
Yeah,
Even
knock on the
free,
door.
also I want to work for you. Yeah, even free, also I want to work for you. That's something like that.
Once I had children, I because I got interviewed by Foster
Mm-hmm.
Associates. What are they called? Norman Foster and Partners. They
Foster
interviewed
and
me
partners.
and they offered me a job, but then they offered not to pay me,
Ah,
so I
painful.
rejected it.
Yeah. So when I was young, I would do it. Young and crazy, but something like that.
I think I had two children at that stage and a mortgage.
Oh, yeah,
Um,
that's quite difficult. Yeah,
so
a
it
lot
was
of responsibility. No, you can't do that.
yeah that I said, how did I put it? I'm worth more than that.
Ah, yeah, true. Yeah.
And so they went, okay. And so we just wrap up. But when that's a whole we could have a whole podcast on that
Yeah,
interview
yeah,
because they
yeah.
were funny. It was lots of handshake and
Hmm.
where you
Hmm.
sit and all that kind of stuff. We could go on about that. But
Yeah, we can talk about
coming back to the students, I still think it's up to the student to
it.
be
Hmm.
curious, to see who they like, whose work do they like, and then find a way to learn
Yeah.
from that person.
And also, they need to start researching which architects or which architectural technologists in town they want to work for, and they
Hmm.
need to start communicating with them, and they need to start marketing themselves. Because, yeah, if they are second year students, this is the best thing they could do. I think so. Because it is small town, like we already discussed in earlier podcasts, so they should research already, and maybe the architects may design the best buildings, but the design lead may not be the best person of explaining things. Sometimes their expectation may be different, right? So if you're working for a large architectural firms, the dynamic is different. And if you're working for a small tech architect for a small an architectural technologist, that the way your process is different because it's more on the smaller buildings, I believe. So yeah, but you're at least you're learning how the things work, how the materials combine
Hmm.
together, how things assembles, how you draw the details. That's all. Everything's important. Or bigger concept. Sometimes the
So
architects will allows you to do bigger the concept drawings, etc. Yeah.
I met an architect when I was at high school,
Hmm.
and I would go and see him every once in a while. He said, come and see
Hmm.
him. So I'd go and see him. I'd do
Hmm.
work experience. And during my university years, I used to come back and I'd always call in and see him, and he'd always take me out and show me stuff that he was
Hmm.
doing. It was
Hmm.
really incredible.
Hmm.
That I, when I worked for him, it wasn't so much fun, but he was so kind in those early years of showing me what he did and his enjoyment of doing it.
Hmm. Yeah, that's how is it. Yeah, I was quite lucky enough when I was started working for American architects, and he teach me how to draw. What are the line weights and my bad habits, and he criticized me. Sometimes I suck like a young kid because he. But when I look at back, yes, he is right because of him, my detailing is better. All the is much more presentable, more. And yeah, and after that, when I went to Singapore, and I worked for the contractors, and sometimes I need to explain how the things works or how things assemble together, and that's also my understanding on the detailings and fixings of the things. So yeah, sometimes I had to be street smart, sometimes I need to be book smart, and keep learning, keep curious, and keep moving, keep driven yourself. Yeah, I think that's the way forward for whether you're an architect or architectural technologist. That's the way forward, I think. And yeah, sometimes you may meet good people, sometimes you may not. That's life. I think so. Hmm.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, the curiosity I think is a big one for the students,
Yeah.
helping
Hmm.
them get. But I think it's that other thing is that they need to be taught to be curious, and they need to be
Yeah.
told
Yeah.
to look for the people they want to work for, and then if they find a really good one, they will. If they find a really good designer, doesn't matter whether an architect or a technologist, they will be able to learn a lot from that person. But you never
Yes.
stop learning, and so the next thing is to look for the next person to hone the next skill. You might go and work for someone who's good at documentation, but you want to learn design, you go and work for someone who's good at design, and you
Yeah.
bring your documentation. And every job you do will teach you something. Even the
Yeah.
worst jobs you've had teach you something.
Yeah. That's it. All right. Thank you. Yeah.
Thanks, Ethan. That
Yeah.
was a really good question. Oh, I hope
Hopefully
people
the
are listening
students.
and
Yeah. Hopefully, especially the students, they will learn from our last two episodes. And yeah, we'll see you next week.
see you next week, Ethan. Take care.
Bye.